Are you new to VR or looking for your first VR shooter? With many options available, two of the most highly recommended games are Pavlov and Contractors. While both are quite similar when compared to other VR shooters, you might wonder which one is better. Let's explore what sets them apart. So firstly, let's get some basic information, then we will see which game wins in each of the 6 categories I have chosen. Firstly, Pavlov. Developed and published by Bankrupt Games, it was released on February 27th, 2017 as an early access game on Steam. It boasts over 36,000 very positive reviews and an overall rating of 91%. Meanwhile, Contractors, developed and published by Caveman Studios, was released on December 14th, 2018. It has garnered over 3,500 very positive reviews on Steam with an overall rating of 84%. Our first category is a pretty easy one, price. Contractors wins this one. It's $15.49 versus Pavlov's $19.49. You can also get Contractors for $14.99 if you buy it on the Meta store. This segues nicely into our next category, player base. According to SteamCharts.com, Pavlov has had an average of 189 players in the past 30 days, whilst Contractors has had an average of 46. You may think this is a clear win for Pavlov, but it's not as simple as that. This is because Contractors is cross-platform with Quest players, and Pavlov is cross-platform with PSVR 2 players. I think by simply looking at the sales of the Quest platform when compared to the PSVR 2, I think it's fair to say that the Contractors player base is much larger overall, or at least has the potential to be. I would give Contractors the point here, but seeing as the PSVR 2 has had a massive price reduction recently, I think it's fair to say that the Pavlov player base is going to explode soon, and for that reason I'm not going to give a point to either one. Alright, our next category, Gunplay / Guns. I combined these into one category for simplicity, just to summarize both of these games in a way that a lot of people can understand. Contractors is more arcadey and Call of Duty like, whilst Pavlov has a more realistic approach and feels much more like CSGO or Battlefield in terms of movement. Obviously both of these games are VR, so it's quite hard to make that comparison, but it's just so you have an idea. Pavlov has around 39 standard guns in the base game and around 24 World War II guns, while Contractors has around 35 standard guns and 18 World War II guns. Contractors also has a side game mode where you can use a bow and arrow alongside a katana, sort of like a ninja mode. It isn't really important, but yeah, that's in Contractors. So obviously Pavlov has more weapons than Contractors, but how do these weapons play? Well, as I said before, Pavlov feels much more realistic. Guns have more virtual weight, emulating what a rifle or pistol would feel like in real life. This, in partnership with the slower, more realistic movements, makes it a lot harder to play run and gun play styles. In Pavlov, you need to consider positioning and teamwork. Pavlov and Contractors have very comparable gun interactions. Many older VR games opted to use the buttons on the controllers to change guns and reload. Thankfully, both Pavlov and Contractors instead aim for the better and more realistic approach of physically grabbing magazines and inserting them into the weapon. For example, Pavlov has a pouch where you grab bullets from for every weapon, whilst Contractors has individual slots placed on your player body where you grab magazines from. The secondary and primary weapon magazines are located in different places on the body. Contractors takes the realism edge in this regard. As I said before, whilst Pavlov aims for a more realistic approach, Contractors is more arcadey. This means weapons feel lighter, movement is much faster, and they have added things like sliding. You can also jump quite far too. Contractors' recoil is much easier to control than Pavlov's. I think they both play very well when it comes to gunplay, and they both have a great selection of guns, but I'm going to give Pavlov the point for this category. It has more guns, and I believe that the realism is much more suited for the VR medium. The way Pavlov leans more into strategy also emphasizes a focus on communication with teammates, and leads to a much better social experience in my opinion. This leads us perfectly into the next category, game modes. Both games have the typical team deathmatch and free-for-all game modes, but they also both have a lot more. Contractors has game modes such as domination, control, gun game, bounty hunter, and kill confirmed, but I think Pavlov takes the edge in this category. They have more social game modes like TTT, prop hunt, hide, and infection, amongst other game modes. Pavlov has gained a lot of popularity on YouTube because people were uploading entertaining clips of TTT betrayals and intense moments in prop hunt. Because Pavlov has these funnier and more social game modes, I'm going to give the point for this category to Pavlov. Our next category is maps. This is more of a subjective category, but in total, Contractors has 13 official maps, whilst Pavlov has 12. That's not taking into consideration Pavlov's nighttime version of maps. I think overall, both games' maps are great. I think I'm going to give the point here to Contractors though. The maps are typically larger, and a lot of the time are more open when compared to Pavlov's maps. Again, this is a mostly subjective category, and it's mostly my opinion, so there you go. First point to Contractors. The next category is mods, and with this, just throw out all of the previous categories and focus on this one. I'm partially joking, but also not really. Mods allow users to add things to the game through the built-in mod browser. This allows you to add new maps, guns, and in the case of Contractors, even total game overhauls. You can turn the entire game of Contractors into a Star Wars shooter or a Titanfall shooter alongside their respective maps. As I mentioned before, Contractors is cross-platform with Quest, and Pavlov is cross-platform with PSVR 2. This is actually a major disadvantage for Pavlov, because for whatever reason, Sony has a weird policy on allowing games to have mods. So from what I understand, Pavlov on PSVR 2 cannot be modded at all, whilst Contractors on Quest can be modded. For this reason, I'm going to give Contractors the point. I also think the maps and total game overhaul mods give Contractors a great advantage here. The final category is graphics, and this is an easy one. Both games aim for a realistic art style, but Pavlov just looks better. The textures are higher resolution, and the post-processing effects are much higher quality. This is also shown in the game development. Contractors has to support both Quest users and PCVR users, whilst the Pavlov Quest version is actually a completely different game with lower graphical fidelity, called Pavlov Shack. This version isn't cross-platform with PCVR or PSVR 2. So yeah, I think this category is quite easy to answer. The point goes to Pavlov. Alright, so we've gotten through the categories, and here's the final score. 2 points to Contractors and 3 points to Pavlov. Even though Pavlov scored higher than Contractors, you should still do more research by reading the reviews on the App Store or other videos if you are still undecided. Both games are great, and I hope that this video was useful for you. Thanks for watching.